Beautiful. Welcome to the experience joy. This is going to be next 3 consecutive days when we just meet for an hour. And we will explore the topic. We will also practice some breath, meditation, and relaxation that can help us to cultivate joy. So what I would like to start today for each of you is that if you can take a nice and easy, comfortable seat, or if it feels comfortable more for you to lay down, you can do that as well, okay? And so first get comfortable so that your feet are fully grounded if you are sitting up, and also that the sitting bones and the pelvis are supported by the chair. And as you are there, see if you can gently move your shoulders back and forth. And as you do, make sure that your shoulders are over your hips. So in yoga, in Tadasana, in a mountain pose, the feet are foundational, right? In this pose, in sitting up, your sitting bones and pelvis are foundational, so they are becoming feet, to the pose. And then as you close your eyes, you can also soften the gaze if that's not comfortable, to close your eyes and allow your body to settle exactly as it is. There is nowhere you need to go, and there is nothing you need to become or take care of in this moment. Just notice it. This is an hour to be with yourself. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose. And gently exhale through your mouth. And again, take a deep breath in. And exhale. And again, inhale, filling your lungs with fresh, life-giving breath. And exhale, letting go of any tension you no longer need to carry. Inhale and exhale. And as your breathing begins to find its own natural rhythm, simply notice that each breath is a new beginning. Inhale, new beginning, exhale. With every inhale, life enters into you. And with every exhale, you have an opportunity to release what no longer serves you. Now bring your awareness to a simple truth. You are not your circumstances. You are not your to-do list. You are not the thoughts moving through your mind. Thoughts come and go. But underneath every thought is your being. And today you have the freedom to choose who you are being. And as you breathe in, silently say to yourself, I choose joy. And as you breathe out, I release what keeps me from experiencing joy. And again, inhale, I choose joy. Exhale, I release what keeps me from joy. And notice that joy is not something you must earn. It is not waiting for everything in your life to be perfect. Joy begins with where you place your attention. One breath, one choice. Now imagine that with every inhale you are breathing joy in every cell of your body. Feel it filling your heart, your mind, your belly, your shoulders, your feet, your entire being. Take another slow breath in. And exhale. One more deep inhale and exhale. Very, very nice. And then very slowly, gently, you can open your eyes. Very nice, so welcome. I want to have these 3 days to explore 3 different of elements, really understanding and living joy. And so the first day today, we are going to talk about being joy. Tomorrow we will be working on feeling joy. And the last day would be experiencing joy. So today I really want to talk a little bit just kind of about what does it mean being joy. It's really interesting if you think about joy that many people assume that joy is just only a feeling. But if you think about it, if you would see the word joy, it's also a noun, right? And so we can kind of look, at, because language creates, right? We can look at it then from the perspective, what if we would say being joy is, in that sentence, being joy, that is a noun, right? And one thing that is really important for us is that people also assume that joy is always connected to something just that is outside, that it's going to be bringing us joy. And we many times hear things like, oh, that has brought so much joy, to me to be just, with my friends. Or it has brought so much of joy that I got a card from my sister, right? So many times people talk about joy, that it's something that is definitely connected to something that is outside, and that it can, cultivate, joy. but I want to suggest that actually joy is something that can be cultivated just, in any stage of our lives, regardless what is taking place in our life. So I would say that joy, the circumstances do not determine our joy. We are the ones who determine our joy. And how is it? It's by what we think and what we think about and what we prioritize. So this is something I think very, very important. It's we are the ones who determine joy in our lives. And it's by the focus, where we put that focus, and therefore what we prioritize, in our lives. And then the other things that I wanted to say is that it is really our, thoughts that we have that can become seed of joy. Because the way I am connecting to anything that is around me is going to create a certain feeling within my body. And if I connect to things in unhealthy language, that is going to create a certain vibration, within me. And I love, just kind of hear a quote. This is from a man whose name was David Omeke, who says, we don't do something until we have a thought about it. That's why a huge part of our agency is our ability to think for ourselves. We choose what to think about and also what to believe, right? So this is something really, really important, is that nobody is really in charge of our thoughts, and therefore nobody is really also in charge of the joy that we experience, in our lives. And I think that you have probably heard, a beautiful quote also from, his name was James Allen, As a Man Thinketh. It's a beautiful little, book, and it says, men or women imagine that thought can be kept secret, but it cannot. It rapidly crystallizes into habit, and habit solidifies into circumstances. Now, if I look at this, for me is, so people sometimes think that we can keep our thoughts secret. And in a way, if you think about it, yeah, yet what he is suggesting that it is not the truth. We cannot really, because it rapidly crystallizes into habit, because as we think, we act. And so as we act, that then really creates, also the circumstances we are finding ourselves in our lives, right? So if I would give just, really a practical example, if I would say, I am not athletic, it just came to my mind, if I'm saying I'm not athletic, that thought really just kind of, is crystallized into some habit. So if I would believe that, it would probably take me away from doing anything that would be around just, activities that would be athletic, right? So I will probably choose just kind of to be in a different places, and there is nothing wrong about not being athletic if person kind of, thinks that, but what it does is that it can be attached, that thought, to this is how I am, this is how I always have been, and this is therefore how that I'm clumsy, or I am always, overweight, or whatever that is, that I don't have a motivation, to just kind of do things, right? So it's just one thought is snowballing many other thoughts that are going to go along with that belief, with that thought. And that really brings us then in a circumstances of life that, if I say that, I might just simply give up on certain things, and that will then put me in the circumstances that I might, end up either in a hospital or whatever that might be, right? And so I really just kind of, love this, how, the thoughts really are so essential and important in our lives. Just the other day, I was on a Facebook, and Judith Lasseter, she had just a beautiful, beautiful quote. And it's hers, but she says, about this quote, that it has come really from her studying her whole life, from a lot of people, about life. And just, she says that a real freedom is a freedom from tyranny of our thoughts. And I was like, wow. That real freedom is a really freedom from a tyranny of our own thoughts. That really just, it is what my mind cultivates that is then just, the reality of my day, the way I feel, how I act, and what I create, right? So I just, for a second, I will pause, and I would like to just ask, how this is landing for you. Now, those of you who will be watching this, or who are watching this on recording, I'm going to pause this now, and I want you to think about it. What is landing for you as you are hearing that, and what you are hearing about the thoughts, and to really have just kind of, the privacy here within the live call. I will just pause this so the people who are on the call can, share their takeaways. So I'll pause it now. So what is really interesting is, as we have explored a little bit in the conversation here with people who are, participating in the live call, is that there are things that take place in our lives. And if it's something that is not pleasant or dangerous, it can be a diagnosis, or it can be bad news, right? Our mind goes immediately to the scarcity, and it starts creating, from that place of scarcity, it starts to create just kind of the other narrative. And there is something beautiful about just kind of the mind, that it helps us, and it does it only because it wants to keep us actually alive, even if it is telling us that, something happened, oh my gosh, it's the end, and, all these other things, right? But what is really beautiful about it, that we know that we can hold two truths together, okay? Meaning, we cannot change the circumstance. For instance, if I break a foot or break a leg, okay, it just will be there, okay? Yet I can just kind of also hold the truth. Yes, this is what it is, and I'm choosing to be calm. I'm choosing just kind of, to be nicer and kinder to myself. Because what is really interesting about all this, when we kind of get tested, okay, it's, so interesting how it really helps us to either create ourselves into some new creature, or we don't do anything and it keeps us spiraling just kind of, down. And I really, really just, have noticed that it is almost 100% truth that people, unless they are tested, they just don't evolve. And I'm not saying just kind of that universe is so mean that it gives people cancer, or it gives people, or something happen, you know, this person needs to break the leg just kind of, you know, to be better. No, I'm not suggesting that, but you know, always the circumstances of life that are challenging, they are asking us to bring the best out of us. And usually that's not the choice. It's for a lot of people, it just brings the worst of us out of us, right? And so this is something that is connected also to the concept of what we are talking about today. And that is just, who am I choosing to be, you know, in the circumstance of the life I am? And I am not only suggesting, but, you know, I have gone through my life and have seen things that would be taking place either in my life or in the life of my loved ones that were, even I would say, scary. Some of them, they were a matter. There were a few things that were a matter of life and death, you know, that, you know, I have experienced in my family. Yet I just kind of, you know, have noticed that in every single case, I would go through that first spill that would take me exactly just kind of to like, oh my gosh, what happens if I'm going to be by myself, if my spouse just kind of is gone, you know, or if this is going to take place, like what am I going to do? How am I going to deal with that, right? So it's always there. And I really just kind of, you know, have seen, especially just kind of these past few years, I'm just seeing with how am I experiencing myself, that it's many times a matter just kind of, you know, of minutes that I can recreate myself, you know, asking just myself, okay, I feel this. And can I still just kind of, you know, stay grounded and calm? And I see that I can do it. It's available to me. Now, there are circumstances of the life that it might take a day or two, or it might take even a week, you know, just kind of to accept, you know, the news, right? Or accept just kind of the certain fact. And so there is a time that, you know, there might be sadness, that might be just disappointment. You know, something happens and we plan for something and then we cannot go, you know, what we have planned for. We cannot travel because of maybe the circumstance that took place. So this is all part of just, you know, being human. Yet what I suggest that even just in the circumstance when we break our wrist, we can still actually experience joy. And that is true. Because when we break something, you know, it just doesn't determine just, you know, our day, our week, our month, right? And if you notice also, if this takes place, you have had during the day moments that you did feel joy. Is that right? Right. And that is something that is just so important. It is, again, just kind of living from that place. Again, what am I choosing? What is my foundation? You know, again, going back, just kind of, you know, who am I choose to be? Okay. And it's not an affirmation, but it's a state of being, right? So, that is something that is, I think, so very important to it. One thing that just, you know, I also have noticed is that when we go through, you know, something that is unpleasant, and we are making it mean something. So if I, you know, break something, you know, or break in my body something, I can just kind of create myself, I'm clumsy. Okay, or I'm old, or whatever it is. And what is really important is just, you know, noticing first what the thought is. And then really just kind of, you know, realizing that you are the creator of the thought, and you are the one who can therefore release that thought, because it's a judgment that we have made about ourselves. Nobody else created it. And I know that people who are around you and see the same thing, and they would hear, sometimes the narrative that we create about it, would say, I would never ever thought it, about you, about like that. Like, how did you even just kind of, could think about it that way? People are just, surprised, right? And so one thing is to realize we do create that. And as we create that, we realize that we have the full power and agency also to expire, the thought. So it's kind of almost like if you would write that sentence, I'm clumsy, you can put an expiration date on it, and it can be July 29, 2026 at 7:35 p.m. Eastern time. That's when it's going to expire. You have that full power just kind of to do that. And the expiration comes from the process to really forgive ourselves for seeing ourselves or relating, to the circumstance that I'm clumsy. I forgive myself for seeing myself or defining myself or judging myself as being clumsy. And it's really something that, is so important to experience in our heart. I forgive myself for seeing myself or defining myself or judging myself as being clumsy. And really say that and feel that I really do forgive myself. Forgive just kind of, myself, that thought just kind of, has been there, and that, I started just kind of, like watering it, right? Because when we say that 4 or 5 times, we realize that there is completely a new and deeper truth about ourselves. The truth about us is not that we are clumsy. Down deep, the truth is completely different, and it doesn't have to be the opposite. I'm not clumsy, okay? People are very times surprised when just kind of, you do this meditative work. I forgive myself for judging myself as being clumsy. For the real truth is, and it can be, I always say, start with I am and just feel what it comes there. And there might be things, I'm loved, I'm loving, I'm lovable, or I'm light, okay? It can be something completely different, not exactly just kind of the opposite of that thing. And when people really just kind of tap in the deep truth of the soul, who they are, it's just so liberating. It doesn't change the diagnosis or the circumstance, but you are creating, yourself from such a beautiful and clean space. So it's kind of like almost, we would call it like a clean pain, just dealing with the pain from clean place rather than from the dirty place. And that comes from, the state, of mind. So there is a powerful, saying, come what may, and love it. Right? And it's just so just, like blows you away if you go through something as a broken leg, or, really not really, again, just, something that you really would love to experience, and still just kind of saying, come what may, and love it. Can I love what I am being? And to me, I see it not just kind of being in love, with, with just kind of with the fact, that there is a broken leg or broken wrist. But to me, it is just kind of, loving just kind of, the way I'm creating myself into it and helping, therefore, just to keep healing myself, meaning being clean in just kind of, the way I am inviting just kind of, this experience to my life, right? And just kind of seeing there, just what is it that the universe is helping me see, that otherwise I would not see. What is it in an amount of freedom that the universe really wants to offer to me that I would otherwise never experience? What is the level of, joy that is there still available to me, and it would not be able to just kind of, be experienced if I would not have to have, something like this in my life, right? And so this is something that is just, I feel, so powerful and so beautiful, that and that's what the joy is. Because, I truly, I remember when I was 18, I came across this thought that we truly, as humans, we are here to have joy. That's the purpose of life, is to have joy. And it has changed my life tremendously to just kind of know, and it resonated with me so deeply, and still just kind of resonates with me. I was just 19 years old when I have heard this thought, and it completely changed my life. I felt just like, Patricia, was saying, wow, from what I'm hearing, I just feel how powerful, we can be in the way we refer to ourselves, who we are being, and therefore to anything around us. I think it was C.S. Lewis that he said something, and I don't have the exact quote, but he said something that if we truly could see who we are and the way we would be created, we would worship ourselves. We would worship that being. Can you imagine that? That if we would be truly capable to see just kind of, who we are, we would worship that being. And just that tells me something that is just so beautiful about the whole life is about our relationship that we have toward ourselves. Yes, we are taught to cultivate a relationship with the Creator and with our neighbors, people around us. But again, it comes all the way back how much we are relating, ourselves with the sense either being friend to ourselves, being kind to ourselves, being compassionate, being the best friend, to ourselves. Or if we are just being not, as good, in that, and we are referring just kind of in a different way. And it's just so beautiful when, I meet some people who just do this type of work that, we have been doing today, and they just say, honestly, I really do love who I am. Does it mean that they think that they are perfect or they are, better than anybody else? It's not that. But just kind of being able to say that I do love myself, and it's just so beautiful to feel that. And because I do love myself, I treat myself under all circumstances of my life with kindness and a gentleness and compassion. And it also, therefore, brings completely different choices that we can cultivate each day, every breath we take. We might not be perfect in it, but if we are being kind to ourselves, if we have that in our cup, if our cup is so full of kindness and love, we can give it. If our cup of love is just, our relationship to us is here, we cannot give more than that, right? So the more we are being kind to ourselves, it just does have that vibration, something so powerful to any being that we are in connection with. So in a circumstance, having somebody who has to go through surgery, right? It means absolutely everything to that other person, that they can feel an anchor in someone, that they feel the love and calm, knowing that no matter what, we are going to be okay. So, with that, I really would like to just close again with a, short, meditation, just to, and the breath, just to really just, creating that sense of relationship, who I am being to ourselves, that it's loving and that it's kind. So if you would again just either sit up or lay down, and you can close your eyes, you can relax your shoulders, and then simply notice your breath. And welcome that breath as most unique, the breath that you are taking you have never taken before. The exhale you are taking, as many of exhales that you have had through your life, this one is unique. It's not like any other else, even if that would be measured. And the line and the dots might look, and the diagram, similar. The quality of the breath we take comes also from the quality of who we are being. The breath, the gift of breath. Breath equals soul. So when you are really breathing in and out, it is your soul breathing in and out. You are giving your soul space. And the more relaxed we are, the more easy for the soul is just simply be there. And our soul is always perfect. It's always healthy. It's eternal. And it's always our guide. our true guide. And so how beautiful at this very moment of the universe that you and I are, a moment that has never, ever, ever been there before, that we can share this very moment together from all the places that we could be. We are together, even if it is a virtual space. We are connected in our souls. And we dance together. And it is a dance of joy. And being just reminded that you are okay. I am okay. That you are pure. I am pure. That you are loved, loving, and lovable forever. I am loved. I am loving. And I am lovable forever. I am loved. I am loving. I am lovable forever.